So we have Troy Love in the great outdoors today. So
Yes, good morning. Good
yeah.
morning.
So where are you?
I'm in Idlewild, California.
Oh, wow. Okay. I actually
Yeah.
know where that is too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if you were in northern Arizona but now I know. So yeah.
Yeah, Idlewild, California. So
Yeah.
beautiful little place. A lot cooler than Yuma today. I'll tell you. It's 105 in
Yes.
Yuma today.
Yeah,
So
yes, it's similar in Phoenix.
yeah.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, but it's called summer, and hey, we don't have snow in January,
I
so this
know.
is
I never
yeah,
have
so
to
it's
shovel
okay.
that stuff. So
Exactly. So
I'm willing to endure.
for that we're grateful. So
Yeah.
while we wait for some questions, so I was mentioning to Troy that I often recommend his work group. We have another one scheduled on our Seeking Integrity site. Those are 90 minutes per week, live facilitated for 6 weeks, and that is working on on the attachment wounds, those voices of shame. It's in a very practical way. Highly encourage that one's for men only. So, but for guys that are ready to do some of that deeper work, that this isn't the one to start with. If if you're still acting out, start with Sex Addiction 101 or Porn Addiction 101, or if you're just hopefully not even acting out, but if you're like going, how do I navigate this recovery, then those others are a better fit, Sex Addiction 101 or Porn Addiction 101. But when you're ready to start digging into some of those layers, the attachment wounds, and I think Troy's and Eddie Caparucci's Inner Child, those are so good, and I don't care which order you take them in. I think you will find that to be really helpful on your healing journey, just having the ability to identify what's going on and making a choice about what you do, not reacting in a negative way. And I see we have a question, but before that, Troy does twice a month, well, every alternating Thursdays, a betrayed partner drop-in group on Thursdays to talk about those attachment wounds. He's on the opposite side of John Taylor's webinar, so that's every other Thursday. And then every Friday, and I point lots of guys to this, is his drop-in group with the guys, again, talking about these issues. So there's lots of free and low cost support. And then I did mention, and I will mention now that this is being recorded too, I have personally attended the in-person retreat with Troy to work on things. And as much work as I've done personally, it's always amazing what comes up. And but that's an opportunity for healing and progress, so I'm grateful for it. And if that's something you're interested in, please reach out to me or to Troy directly, and happy to point you in the direction of that. But I wouldn't do it very early in the process. Again, that's you want to have some time and a little foundation, because like it's work. So but when you're ready, man, it's good stuff. So okay, Troy, got some questions for you. Oh, I'm just under 13 months sober. What is your definition of lusting?
So to me, it is objectifying a person sexually. So it is, you're looking at a person, and then instead of seeing them as a whole person, you're looking at them oftentimes with body parts included, like, oh, I'd like to, some of the lingo, I'd like to tap that, or, I'd like to do something with that. And they're looking at their rear end, or they're looking at some part of their body, and they're not seeing them as a whole person. And then that creates triggers in your body, or chemical releases in your body, to me. And so to me, that's what lusting is you've objectified a human. Part of being human is that we are sexual creatures, and there's sexual desire. And so part of this is learning how to be able to see beauty in a person without thinking, okay, what do I do? How can I like undress that person? Or what can I do to have sex with that person? Or what it would be like to be with that person? And that's something that I think we all need to do. That I do that with food a lot. it's not sexualized, but I would just fantasize and sexualize, knowing that that's not healthy for me, knowing that that's not going to be good for me. So when we're talking about lusting in particular, it's it's objectifying a person sexually. That's my thought. What are your thoughts,
Well,
Tammy?
and you kind of mentioned this, but like the time, like, because like I think you're spending, it isn't just a fleeting thought. It's like
Mhm.
you're focusing on that too. So the objectifying, absolutely, and dehumanizing, and that they're there for your pleasure, not anything else. But I also think that, but it isn't just that quick little thought or like the 3-second rule or whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
I'm really focused on, whatever, whatever the person is or the food is or whatever it is. It's that, all in
Yeah,
focus.
I remember listening to a guy who practices meditation, and he practiced it with Buddhist monks. And he said at the beginning, when he was first practicing, the thought of going to a beach was overwhelming to him because, so many bodies, so many people wearing practically nothing. It was overwhelming for him. And it was also very triggering for his partner as well. It's like, I can't tell you how many people I work with whose wives are afraid to go to the grocery store with them because they're afraid of being triggered by what their partner's looking at. Um, and he said he came to a place where he's actually able to work on himself enough that when he goes to the beach, he's just at the beach and he's enjoying the air and the beauty and the water, and yes, there are bodies all around, but he's not like staring at them, eye googling. He's not undressing them with his eyes. He's not thinking about what can he do with these people. He's just being at the beach. And when I explain that to people, that sounds like a foreign concept for a lot of people. It's like, how do you get there? I believe it's possible to get there, but it does require a lot of mastery of myself and my mind, and being able to know what I want to pay attention to, not letting my mind take me where it wants me to pay attention.
Yeah, well, and I think you mentioned too, paying attention to the sand and the sun and the listening to the waves, and being intentional about other senses, not just the eyes, but paying attention, the smell, whatever, like I think
Mhm.
I think I do believe that our minds, are our best friend and our worst enemy. So it's, how do we focus in a positive direction? We talk about having uh like a check in with a sponsor before you do, like, even going to the grocery store. It's okay, I'm going to the grocery store, my intention is that I will pay attention to the grocery list and my spouse, and then when you get back from the grocery store, and you check in with your sponsor, like the bookends of, like, and there's lots of different ways and different tools for starting that shift. Are you going to do it perfectly? Probably not, but boy, the more you practice, like everything else, the more you practice that, the more you're going to build up muscles that will help you engage in a healthy way. So, okay, next question. How can you heal from the past when you're constantly confronted with triggers? That's a great question.
So we do have wounds, right? We have those. But what really causes us the suffering is the stories I believe about myself because of those wounds. So when I hear I'm constantly being triggered, and my wounds get hit too. Um, what we have to learn how to do is tell a different story, because when I'm walking people through the Finding Peace worksheet, either on Thursdays with the women or on Fridays with the men, um, the second I first I say, "What's your wound?" And then the second question I ask every time is, "What have you come to believe about yourself as a result of those wounds?" And so what we want to be able to do is help, and there's multiple ways to do that, but help our body release the story that I've been holding on to myself. So if I have a rejection wound, I'm not enough. There's something bad about me. If I have a neglect wound, I'm not worth your time. I'm not important to you. If I have an abuse wound, I deserve to be punished. Whatever those beliefs are, what we want to be able to do is help your body, because your body has like wired itself to believe that way, and oftentimes as a source of protection back in the day. But we want to be able to help our bodies change the narrative. And so it sounds weird, but we often can get to a place where I look forward to my wound being hit because I'm going to practice doing something different this time. I'm not going to get sucked into that shame story. I'm not going to get sucked into that thing that tells me I'm not enough. I'm looking forward to changing the narrative. And so that's how we get past the wounds from the past. Is we tell a new story today and a story about ourselves in the future that's completely different than what we've been believing about ourselves in the past.
Well, and I think because you said constantly confronted with triggers. So identifying what the triggers are, but having a plan when you're not in a trigger of when you're triggered, what are you going to do? And it's really easy because it's old habits to go into the emotional reacting. And so how can you, how can you stop, and maybe, shoot, sorry. It may be doing some breath work, like just stopping, and what is my reality? Am I really unsafe? I mean, well, there's so many different things, and Troy's talked about them before, but there are lots of things because triggers are happening to you. So how can you stop? I love what Troy's talking about. It's like, and what is the story I'm telling myself about this? And so how can I change this? So how can I take control of this? Sometimes triggers, like there really is danger. Sometimes it's just like I get, I'm triggered by something that isn't, it isn't real in the moment. It's fearful, absolutely, but there isn't real danger in the moment. So it can be very empowering to flip the script. Okay, next question. Thank you both for your time. How do I navigate the feeling that my SA partner took away my choice to consent with his lies?
Okay, so he might have, he or she might have taken away your choice when they were lying, but now that you've discovered that they're lying, they, how do I say this? You do not have to give them your power anymore. You don't have to trust them. I understand that every situation's a little bit different, but you now know that your partner doesn't tell the truth. And what has your partner done to show that your partner is telling the truth? Has your partner done anything to show that they are being honest and in full of integrity? And if they're not, then you can be pretty sure that they're still not telling the truth. And I don't mean that to throw anybody under the bus, but that you can be pretty sure that they are not telling the truth. I know that creates a really wobbly platform for you, but you don't have to be on that platform. And I'm not saying that means you should leave or anything like that. That's completely up to you, but you don't have to be on that platform. It is very distressing and very overwhelming when a person continues to lie to you. So the question is, well, what am I going to do for me in order to take care of me if you are not going to be an honest person? Because I don't want you to continue to be sabotaged by their lies. You know that they lie. So what are you going to do to keep yourself safe? If you know that this is a pattern and they haven't done anything to fix it, what are you going to do? You can continue to stay in the situation and you're going to have a lot of dysphoria and a lot of feeling of powerlessness. But there's a way to take back your power without necessarily having to leave a relationship. There's a way to take back your power.
Yeah, we talk all the time about healthy boundaries, and healthy boundaries are for your safety. You can't change a past. None of us can change a past. I was talking to a very distraught person yesterday, an addict who chose poorly. Let's put it that way. And he has all this remorse about that. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't do anything about that now. Here's where you are. Here's where you are in the present. All we have is right now, and how do we move forward? So I'm not dismissing the past at all. I yes, he's lied. There was things that were done to you, but remaining a victim is so disempowering. So healthy boundaries are for your safety. You are the only person that can take care of you. Clearly, your partner can't, because there was lies and untruths and unsafety. So healthy safety about your emotional safety, your physical safety, your financial safety, and your spiritual safety are the four that that I share often. But it's like, how do you take care of you? Your healthy boundaries are about you, not a reactionary against someone else, not punitive, not retaliatory against someone. It's absolutely, how do you take care of you? And if there's trust being built, then the gap between the two of you can heal. If there isn't, then it's more, I often say, I've got my Kevlar vest on, I need to take care of me. And when somebody is starting to move forward, then there's then there's the ability to step into that space together. But yeah, I mean, the stuff that has happened, and some of it was to you without consent, absolutely. But now here's where you are, and how do you move forward, taking care of you and your health. And with physical stuff, Dr. Rob said it again on the Monday night webinar, but it's like, if you haven't had an STD test, get an STD test. Don't ever believe an addict when they say, well, it's just, no, take care. That's part of you taking care of your physical self, is all of those aspects. So okay. Are all betrayed recovery meetings the same? No. What if my betraying partner doesn't identify as an addict? If not, what resources are available for me? Oh, so this is so funny. It's like he doesn't identify, like, I'm going to use he, I don't know. He doesn't identify as an addict. So where does that leave me? So,
right.
Oh my goodness.
You know more about the different meetings, because I don't usually attend the betrayal recovery meetings. So maybe
Yes,
they're like.
I'm happy to do that. So regardless of whether he takes on a label or not, and we've got Out of the Doghouse work group for men who've been caught cheating. Dr. Rob's #1 book is Out of the Doghouse for men who've been caught cheating. Many of the guys that go to that then start going, oh, I have more of an issue. It wasn't just an affair. And I'm not minimizing the pain of an affair. Regardless, you're here, you're feeling betrayed. Everything is open to you. We have a number of betrayed partner drop-in groups on our website. So check out on Seeking Integrity. There's a drop-in group. Today is Wednesday. So at 12:30 today, Pacific time, there's one tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. And there's more. So regardless of what your partner says he is or isn't, it doesn't matter. You're here, you're feeling betrayed. There's a place for you. There's also Debbie McCrae does a betrayed partner webinar on Fridays. She's always got really good content, very much about, here's 10 things for accountability. Here's, things that, whatever. So check those out. We've got lots of resources. You can also email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. And I can give you some resources, but regardless of what someone says they are or aren't, you being here tells me all I need to know. Check out the, and is tomorrow your day? I can't remember. Are you doing the betrayed partner?
It's
okay.
the first and third. Yeah.
Okay. I need to check. Maybe I'm not, I don't even know. Anyway, so check those resources out. Okay, Troy, the next question. My partner's acting out has been primarily in the form of many emotional affairs over the last 17 years. Sexting and one became physical, and his CSAT does not think he's a sex addict. He's an alcoholic and works in an AA program, sober for almost 2 years, but did formal therapeutic disclosure 4 months ago. He doesn't relate to SA groups. He's yet to share a recovery plan and restitution with me. Would Three Circle still be relevant? Do you think him sharing a recovery plan would be helpful to rebuild trust and create safety with me? Oh, goodness.
Well, so I'll answer your question first. Three circles are really good regardless of whether you're a sex addict or not, regardless of you're an addict or not. Like, everybody struggles with some behaviors that they just know are not helpful for them. And so having a three circle plan, I think, would be helpful for him. Also, having him share with you a recovery plan is also, I think, very helpful, because that helps you know what he is doing. I get that, like, SA and 12-step doesn't fit for everybody, and that's okay, but there's lots of other things that do fit for people. But the question, what I'm looking is, this has been going on for 17 years. He's been sexting and in his mind fantasizing and doing things with other women. And I can't tell you how many women I talk to who thinks that that's the same thing as having a physical affair. So, I don't draw a line. What I'm hearing is that it hurts you, and regardless of whether we put a label on it as it's being a sex addict or not, I don't care about the label as much as I'm hearing that you don't trust him, and you need to have some things that would help you feel like you can trust him more. And so having him share with you what his recovery plan is, having him share with you what his three circles are and what boundaries he has for himself and things that you can expect from him, I think would be really helpful for you. Hopefully he'll be willing to do that.
Yeah, and I have so many questions about oh my goodness, this. Uh, did you hear his CSAT say that he doesn't think he's a sex addict? Because if you heard it from your flying addict, that is, like, that would be a huge grain of salt. If he was really working his AA program, guess what? The 4-step, one of the biggest topics is about sex. And so it doesn't feel like he did a searching and fearless moral inventory of himself in his 4th and 5th steps. So Three Circle Plan, Debbie Allen did on June 14th, did a 3 Circle Plan for betrayed partners. So yes, I agree. It's helpful to have that plan. Yeah, it's just good living stuff. And Scott Brassert, who teaches Sex Addiction 101 work group, he has talked before about doing a 3 circle plan across, all of the problematic and compulsive behaviors. I agree with Troy. I hear so often from partners who are devastated by emotional affairs, and the addict is quick to minimize. Well, I didn't have sex. Now this one did, but yeah, I didn't have sex with them. So it's like, it's the same as porn addicts. It's like, it's still a betrayal. If you've got a secret life, if you're diverting your attention, like we talked about lusting a while ago, if you're diverting your attention over here instead of in your primary relationship, it's hurtful to the relationship. I'm also really concerned about, he did formal therapeutic disclosure 4 months ago, and he doesn't like it. It doesn't feel like he's doing anything. So he was willing to do a formal therapeutic disclosure, but he's not, I don't relate to any of this. So, I talked a bit ago about healthy boundaries for you, really lean into healthy boundaries for you. What do you need to do? Because this person is not, I mean, I would not feel safe with this. I would not feel like he's working on rebuilding trust, on any level. I still hear a lot of denial. Oh, I'm not really a sex addict. Like I said, there's SCA, SLAA, SPAA, I mean, check out, we've got a whole list of them on there. So if one meeting doesn't feel like a fit, guess what? There's others. And just going to one meeting or, a handful of meetings and going, oh, I can't relate. I always say to everybody, go look where you do relate. Don't look for the differences, look for the similarities. And the shame, the lies and secrets, that's the same, whether, regardless of what you're doing. So I'm really sorry. Like this one, obviously I got some energy around. I feel for you. Okay. Oh, great answers. Thank you both. Thank you. You're welcome. Glad that was helpful. Hi, as a betrayed partner, I feel so much shame and embarrassment for staying with an active addict for over 10 years without boundaries and while knowing all along he was a sex addict sleeping around. What does that say about me?
Nothing. It says that you are a loving partner who has been.
I think his internet is cutting in and out. I'm sorry.
You think it says about you.
You're gonna have to
What does
start
your
over,
shadow
Troy.
say that it says about you? Those are some of the things that that says I'm enough, I'm bad, I'm stupid, all that. I probably froze. My Wi-Fi is really kind of not so great here. Plus, there's a big old service truck that I've been hoping it's been driving away. So I'm sorry.
So start over. You said
Okay.
it says nothing about you, and then I heard some bits and pieces of shadows of
Okay.
shame. But so start over.
Okay. Sorry. And the truck is finally moving. And so it should have a direct shot to the Wi-Fi. Anyway, it says nothing about you, says everything about you are a loving, kind, wholehearted person who wants to give your partner another chance. As soon as you found out, you didn't just leave. You're like, okay, I believe in you. I believe.
Service truck must have interrupted again.
I'm gonna move. I froze
Okay.
again, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm gonna while you move, I'm gonna. So Dr. Rob wrote a book, Codependence: Moving Beyond the Myth of Codependency, and because everybody gets blamed, partners are like, what's wrong with you, and what Troy was starting to say, and he'll complete, is there's nothing wrong with you. My only piece of this would be, I would invite you to care enough about you so that you can have healthy boundaries. They're not against him. It's like I am the only person that can take care of me, so what are the healthy boundaries I need to do for my self-care, because this person is not yet willing to step into a recovery mode where he can become trustworthy. So and I hate, I hate when it's the partners are taking on shame is a useless emotion for everybody, but when you're taking on shame and embarrassment, it's Dr. Rob's book, Codependence, is like you see the brokenness, but you also see the all of these amazing things about your partner, and you're able to to see that it isn't. If it was this person is a complete monster, you wouldn't have married him in the first place, so you wouldn't be there. So it's absolutely, it's not that black and white. So, there's that in between, but your self-care is about you taking care of you, not, and it's hard because partners often devalue themselves and don't set those healthy boundaries, that, and if it's a need, we say, what do you need? Those are needs. It's like, I need food, I need sleep, I need water. Those are needs. I need comfort and safety. All of those things are real needs, not pushing yourself aside. So I'm hoping you're in a better Wi-Fi area. So
Hopefully.
start again. You got it.
Everything you said, yes. Too. It doesn't say anything about you as in a bad way. But your shadows of shame, and you may not be familiar with them, but those are the voices in your head that tell you all kinds of crappy things about yourself. They are telling you that it says something about you as a person. And that's one of the reasons why betrayed partners often have a hard time reaching out and letting anybody else know, because those shadows are like, they're going to think I'm stupid for staying. They're going to think my partner's creepy, those kind of shame-based thought processes. And so they don't share it with anybody. So honestly, it doesn't say anything about you. what I want you to know is that you are worthy of love and belonging, and you're worthy of having somebody tell you the truth and somebody who's going to honor you. And hopefully that can be your partner if your partner can figure out how to do that by working on themselves. So it doesn't say anything, and I really hope you don't believe the lie that it does.
And sometimes the addict is quick to jump on that too. It's all about you in a negative way. So yeah,
Right.
please don't buy into any of that. Okay. Being reminded that I need to change the story I tell myself when I was in the healing seat. When it comes to my wife's betrayal, makes complete sense to me logically. I still struggle to actually practice that. And when I do, it doesn't seem to stick because I'm unsure that I truly believe it. Do I need to face this down in order to move forward?
I don't know if you need to face it down, but I love that you are being willing to honestly own that you don't fully believe it yet. And that's not your fault. This is decades of wiring in your brain and your body reacting. So it takes some it takes some different kinds of tools to be able to unlock that. And so one affirmation, even if you said it every day, is not going to be enough for some people to break apart that wiring in your brain. So doing things like breath work, doing things like there's yoga, that trauma-based yoga, doing some body work maybe can help unlock that sometimes. But also journaling. It can also be, I'm going to say, even though I don't fully believe it yet, I'm willing to believe or lean into the possibility that one day I will. There's lots of different things that you can do, but don't let your judge tell you that you're doing it wrong because you don't fully believe it yet. Own that you don't fully believe it yet, but that you want to. And that will help ease it up a little bit.
Well, and nobody does this perfectly. Like, we've shared, and you've done a lot more work on this than me, but like I had something come up again recently. Just knowing what it was like, oh, that's that voice. And having the knowledge that that's what it is. And like you just said, Troy, it's the judge. I don't need to believe that. Thank you very much. I hear what you're trying to do, but I got this. It's called practice. It's like anything else. The more you do it, the more you're going to believe it. And so, and every time you have a little victory where you go, oh, that, I feel better. I actually believe that in this moment. But we're human beings. We're not going to do it perfectly. And you not doing it perfectly once does not mean that you have failed. It's like, okay, I get to do it again. One of the things I love about 12 step is it gives me the opportunity to make amends and to move forward and clean up my side of the street and do things differently. So I always have that ability to do it. So but we're human beings. We're not perfect. We're never going to do it perfectly. You'll never 100% believe it, or you might 100% believe it, like today, right now, and then tomorrow it might be I'm 50-50, but then the next day it might be 95 again. It's all good. Okay, how do I continue to trust my husband who continues to engage in his pornography addiction? Why would you trust him?
Yeah, my question is, you don't. You
Yeah,
don't continue to trust him. You can
no,
continue to love him.
yeah,
You can continue to support him. You can continue to encourage him, but you don't continue to trust him because unless he's unless he's telling you every time and he's not lying about it, then you could continue to trust him, if he's not lying to you about it. But chances are that's not the truth. Like, he's probably is lying to you or covering it up, and then you catch him later and all those things. So you don't continue to trust him. Stephen R. Covey said, we don't talk ourselves out of behaviors that we don't talk ourselves out of behaviors that we've lost trust over. We behave ourselves out of behaviors that we've lost trust over. So you have to watch his behavior, not what his words say. So you don't trust him until his behaviors start to match.
yes. This means I'm lying to myself and everyone else. My actions are what makes things different. Dr. Robbie says all the time, because partners are, should I have sex with this person? And he's like, why would you have some sex with someone you don't trust? And you can say, well, it's just porn. And then no, I mean, I hear all the time from partners who are like, I feel like I'm part of the porn. And the addicts will affirm that. Yes, my head is over here, even though you're with me. So trust is rebuilt over time by his actions showing that he's different. So unfortunately, right now, he is not showing you at all that he is trustworthy. He's still in his active addiction. He can change, but that's for him to take on a recovery journey. And here's the deal. I get this all the time too. So people go, well, he's been in recovery for 3 weeks. I'm like, no, he's been abstinent for 3 weeks. Recovery is like, it takes like a couple of years before you really are on a different path where you're showing up differently. You can expedite that by doing more work, but otherwise, and you can delay it by doing less work. So, it's a journey. Abstinence is just not doing the compulsive and acting out behaviors. But, that's like, you can be a dry drunk. You can not drink and be a really nasty person. So, okay, next question. I've learned more about my attachment style, fearful avoidant. When I first found out about my husband's porn addiction, I was able to understand the why of porn addiction because I had educated myself due to suspicions. I was able to support him. Recently, I began my impact letter and I have had feelings of anger. I have avoided this emotion. I am having doubts about being completely vulnerable with him, even though he is working hard. What can I do? I want to heal me and our marriage. Is my attachment style going to impact my healing? That's a great question. That's a lot of insight too, knowing your attachment style and stuff and being able to identify your fear. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, I love the insight. And it could. Of course you're angry. And of course it's been buried under everything else. And so now you're starting to take a look at what's going on. And anger comes from a sense that something has been taken from you without your permission. And with this whole thing, a lot was taken from you without your permission. So of course you're going to be angry. That doesn't mean you have to be angry for the rest of your life. Anger is an emotion we feel, and hopefully we can let go of it, which is what I'm hearing that you're trying to do. I also hear the fear that you're going to hurt him. I love that you have compassion for him about that. I don't want you to withhold how this has impacted you in order to try and prevent him from feeling his feelings. He also needs to hear how it has impacted you. But if you're not quite ready to read it to him yet, that doesn't mean not to do it. If you're working with a therapist or if you have a sponsor, do the impact letter and read it to them and let some of that anger out, and then rewrite it if you've been able to release some of that anger and do it again. But I don't want you to hold, I don't want you to like burn him at the stake or anything like that, but I don't want you to hold your anger back because you're afraid it's going to hurt his feelings, because that's what you've been doing. That's where that fearful avoidant part of you's been doing. I'm afraid that if I show you how I feel, I'm afraid if I tell you how I'm feeling that you're going to pull away, you're going to run away, you're going to hurt me. So I'll just shove it up, I'll keep it down inside, and it gets bigger and bigger inside till it explodes. So it sounds like you're doing the work, and I encourage you to keep doing the work, and give yourself permission to be angry, and and let that anger out so that you can come to a place of peace and love.
Well, and the fear about being vulnerable, and that's both sides of it. It's and I often do, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I think about what's the absolute worst thing that can happen, and can I tolerate that? Can I survive that? Okay, I can. All right. So then, if it's not that bad, or I mean, I literally do that. I'll play out like all of those little scenarios, and as long as I go, okay, I can deal with that. I have support. Like with all of this, hopefully you're doing this with professionals, or at least have support, from a qualified sponsor or something like that, so that so I'm going to share this. I'm going to feel vulnerable. I'm going to immediately call you so that I've got that support. Like set up your network so that you can be That, you know, if you're going to be in a relationship and heal this, you want to be able to be truthful. You want to be able to be real and vulnerable. And it's challenging, but it's also one of those, that's what the real relationship is. It's a little messy, but being honest with each other about things in a compassionate way, like you said, not burning each other at the stake, but you know, that's how you grow in a relationship. That's a real relationship. Okay, next question. My SA partner dissociates, and I don't think he can really tell all the time. I can tell though. He will dissociate during recovery, and we will get in big arguments. How is he going to get better if he can't be present for recovery?
Well, he's not going to. In the work that I do with the men that I work with, the first couple of months, we spend a lot on just being present and mindfulness, which I get the sense to them is super boring. And they hate it. And they're like, when are we going to do recovery stuff? Well, we're not going to do recovery stuff. This is recovery stuff because you got to start paying attention to what's going on. Disassociation is basically a trauma response that says, I feel so uncomfortable about being in whatever's happening right now that I'm going to step out and be somewhere else. And so that tells me your partner probably has a ton of trauma, and that's why he continues to disassociate. But until he can learn how to be able to integrate that and be mindful and stay present even in the pain, all of us who are struggling with any kind of addiction, whatever the addiction is, we're going to turn back to our drug of choice because that's what we learned a long time ago will help us numb the pain. So we have to learn how to lean into the pain, lean into the discomfort, and know that it's not going to be there forever. But it's going to take some time for him. If he's continues to disassociate, it's going to take a lot longer.
Yeah, well, and maybe when he's not doing that, you have a conversation of when I see this, you know, and I think you can do it in a really caring way. But just I see that you seem to be dissociating, you seem to be exiting, you seem not to be present. You know, tell me what's going on for you right now. Being curious about it may help him, you know, come back to the present. It may help him get a clue of what he's doing. But yeah, ultimately that would be, you know, trauma work or working with this qualified professional on those, you know, specific issues. Eddie Caparucci does a lot of webinars, and he talks about, you know, he talks about those topics. So check some of those out as well. Okay, next question. My PA partner has been in recovery for a few months. I still see things on his computer that I see are dated before his sobriety. And when I ask him about it, he always says he forgot. It seems very convenient to never remember anything from over 6 months ago.
So I don't know what your question is with that. Well, what I'm hearing is that you're saying, I don't see that you're actually in recovery. You're still holding on to stuff from the past. So it's still on his computer. So that's one of the questions, like, why didn't you delete that already? Like, why didn't you sit down and go over all of that either with the sponsor or somebody and get rid of all that stuff? But also, it's like, okay, well, tell me more about that. Well, I don't remember. But that doesn't give you a whole lot of information. And I'm guessing you don't want to know the nitty gritty details about that, but you're probably wanting to know like what was going on. And kind of going back to that question before of a lot of disassociation. There is a lot of disassociation, and there is a lot of stuff that guys don't remember. So I will give them that, but part of that is because they weren't paying attention. And so now it's like, okay, well, I don't know what that was all about, but I can see that that really causes you a lot of pain. I can see that that is really uncomfortable, and I haven't dealt with that yet. So I need to deal with that. So rather than trying to rehash the past, it's well, what's happening in this very moment that you saw this, even though the date was 6 months ago, what's happening right now? And I can address that as an addict. I can try to address that in an empathic way, even if I don't remember the very specific details of that from before.
Yeah, to me, this is, and like I said, like this doesn't even feel like abstinence because it feels like he still has his stash of things, and unfortunately, that, you know, if you're hanging on to those things, I don't know what his recovery path is. You know, like this would be very early in the process. And, what is he doing on a daily basis? And, does he have a sponsor? Is he working with a qualified therapist? Has he taken our porn addiction 101 work group? That would, give him a really solid foundation. So the more work he's doing, if it's just, well, I'm just not going to do that anymore, then the cycle of addiction, and we've had some webinars on that as well, but the cycle of addiction is, sure, I can do abstinence for X amount of time, but he's still keeping the stash. But it's one of those where it's kind of inevitable that, it will happen again. So really my point with you is, what are your healthy boundaries? And what are you doing to take care of you? Because he has, he's very early in this. We're talking about, deeper wounds and things like that, but the dissociation, the ability to use, porn, sex, whatever, as an escape mechanism, like those, that I need to take care of me because nobody else can, that's usually before age 10. So I don't know how old he is, but an adult. And so that's years and decades old, stuff. So just stopping the problematic behavior is stopping the symptom. It feels like the problem, but it's the symptom. And so addressing the underlying issues, is ultimately where recovery happens. And that's a process. But he really would benefit from shoring up, his relapse prevention plan. And if he doesn't know what that is or have it, we've got resources on that. So, okay, Troy, next question. In follow-up to the porn question, he wants to have kids right now. What are your thoughts on this?
I cannot decide that for you, but I would be very mindful about considering bringing kids into the world when you are in a situation where you don't trust your partner. Bringing in that adds more people to the collateral damage. But I can't tell you whether you should or should not have children. That's really a decision that the two of you need to make. But it sounds like in you asking the question that you have doubts, that you're not sure. And so part of that is being able to come up with, what do you need in order to feel safe bringing children into the world? And for how long do you need to be able to see that before you're comfortable bringing children into the world? And do you want to bring children into the world with this person or not? Those are some questions you're probably already asking yourself, but I can see just from what I'm reading in that's a heavy question. And I would not have kids just because he wants to have kids, because of the ramifications of how this affects everybody, and porn and sex addiction affects not only the partner but the children and everyone. So I love that you're being thoughtful about that.
So Dr. Rob did a podcast with Dr. Ken Adams, who wrote a book about adult children of sex addicts. Finally, there's a book, for that. So there's a podcast on sex, love, and addiction, which you'll find on our website. Might be useful for you to hear. Recovery changes everything. People can show up differently, for families, but in active addiction, it's problematic. And it's not just about hiding it from the kids. It's like the things within the relationship are affected too. So there's always the undercurrent. So check that podcast out, and he's got a book too, but the podcast may be helpful. Okay, last question. Or for now, we still have 10 minutes. High pressure situations, birthdays, anniversary, Mother's Day. I regress under some kind of rage due to a mistake on my part. My partner is so angry these days that I have trouble coming back from the initial regression after the first mistake. I'm doing all the work with meetings here 5 days a week. I have my CSAT and couple CSAT. I have calls and journaling and 31 months of sobriety. She feels my regression is a major issue and wants my CSAT to only focus on that, wants to control my therapy, and gives me feedback that my CSAT is on the wrong track and not helping me. She belittles and calls me names like a child, says I'm tantruming and under-functioning. Sunday, her birthday, told me to leave the house and she hated me. Then later she regrets her words and apologizes. But I struggle sometimes, especially special days, to come back from those encounters with her. I asked her today with our couples CSAT to give me kindness and acceptance, but it's hard to ask for anything due to fear of rage and criticism. Mm.
I'm sorry, man. I know that it sounds really painful. Um, you've said a lot about your recovery. I don't know if your partner is in recovery or not. Um, Oftentimes the partner has a ton of rage and they feel so powerless in this situation, and it destroys them, even if the partner is in recovery and has been doing the kind of things that you're saying. It destroys them. Their own anger and rage destroys them. And I can't okay, she finished steps in S&on. That's good. This sex addiction is more than just the person who's struggling with the addiction. I don't understand how the universe does this, but out of all the people on the planet, there's 8 billion to pick from. The universe puts two people together who have weaknesses and strengths that support and hinder the other person's progress. And sometimes we get so angry and fixated on wanting the other person to change that we don't take a look at what's going on in ourselves. And when I'm working with couples, regardless of whether we're dealing with addiction or not, if all we get into is the blame and resentment game, we are never going to fix the relationship. John Gottman's one of his number one signs of identifying whether a couple is going to survive a marriage or not is how fast the criticism heats up and how long the criticism goes on for, and whether there's any kind of makeup stuff. Criticism and contempt will kill a relationship, regardless of whether the person is an addict or not. It just will. So I love that you had the courage to ask for kindness. I hear your judge maybe telling you that you don't deserve to ask for kindness. You've been such a horrible human. Uh, and yet the only way that the two of you are going to be able to figure this out is how you work on being supportive of each other without the rage, without the contempt. And I couldn't tell from your question whether you rage or if you go into shame after you make a mistake. But either one of you raging is not going to help the relationship. There's lots of tools that are available. We have lots of people who talk about relationship stuff on here that can help. Matt Wheeler and others that can talk a lot about that. But at some point we have to stop looking at the other partner and saying, what are you going to do to fix this relationship? This is what you need to do to stop, and point the finger at ourselves and say, what do I need to do to fix this relationship, and what do I need to do to stop this, and to take ownership of our own stuff. And unfortunately I can't make anybody do that. I hear the sadness, I hear the hurt, I hear the you trying, and I hear that hopefully the partners CSAT, the relationship CSAT, can help you guys work on that.
Yeah, well, and I've shared on webinars before the Cartman drama triangle. Like it's really interesting, but it's also really helpful, because I call this the negative two-step, and I see you're from Texas, so there's the two-step going on, and it's the negative two-step, and it's one of those where, this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and you guys, that's a repeating pattern, and until and unless somebody is willing to step off of that, and look for something different. And I hear you asking for kindness, and I hope, I hope that was met. But yeah, doing the 12 steps, great. And 12 steps is a continued, it's not one and done. But it's also like raging by either of you is not only not helpful, but is hurtful, and comes back and apologizes. But one of the things that I find is, well, we say this all the time with addicts, it's like, words are meaningless. It's changes in actions that are, are really important. And so, and words are hurtful. And so once they're said, it's like, you can't just reel them back in and go, oh, didn't, it has been said. And I also hear the fear, that you're fearful of, of things too. So, yeah. I think with your couples therapist, perhaps saying, I'm doing my work with my therapist. Now, often a couples therapist has contact with each of your individual therapists. So having that person be the point person, but for, like, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I need, is different than your therapist is doing this wrong. Like that is not helpful for anyone. There can be collateral information, but your couples therapist, hopefully is working with both of your therapists. The shame trauma bonding has been completed, and we do the 2-step, but only on bad days. Well, so then hopefully, when you're having a good day, they honor that you're having a good day, and how can we shift things rather than getting into that. I mean, the Cartman drama triangle it doesn't mean that those patterns aren't going to show up. It's like, instead of choosing to do this negative 2-step, stop, we're heading down a negative thing, how can we shift this? Having a plan for how we shift that, is how things can change. So
The other part I thought of as we were talking is you've identified it's only on certain days, especially around the special days, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries. And I know there's a lot of pressure to get some of those days right. And so maybe talking about that well before the day of, and saying, okay, it's one of those days. What are we going to do what do you need from me? What do I need from you in order to make sure that we don't have one of those days again? Because I think we're doing well on the other days, not those special days. So what can we do to make those days good too?
yeah, well, and it says the couples therapist says my CSAT is doing it wrong too. Like this feels like something's not quite right. And I guess, when you go to your therapist, what are your treatment goals, and how, have the treatment goals shifted? You've been doing this for 31 months. Maybe it's time to reevaluate what are you doing in your individual therapy, and is it working for you and, and for your relationship? It may be time to reevaluate that, but, having the conversation with your therapist of like, this is what the treatment plan is. That
have your CSATs talk to each other.
Yes.
Hopefully they do.
Yes.
Like if your couples therapist is thinking your CSAT's doing it wrong, we'll pick up the phone and have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I always think it could be, it's not right and wrong, but like, is there something that we're missing? It's like everybody gets into this, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong. Well, maybe it's just like, there's a piece missing of like that your CSAT doesn't know that this has become an issue, and it would be helpful. I don't know, but a little more grace maybe. Okay, last question. I recently disclosed to my husband of a betrayal from 20 years ago. I'm trying to answer all his questions honestly. However, sometimes I just can't remember how I was feeling or what behaviors I did from that time. He says that it feels minimizing when I can't remember. How do I respond when I actually can't remember, but don't want him to feel that I'm minimizing his feelings and questions?
I love this. This could have been written by a husband when the wife wants to know all these questions. So I try to coach my guys and women that there's a question behind the question. So what is really being asked? Because honestly, nobody remembers anything from 20 years ago in that much detail. Nobody's going to remember exactly what you were feeling or exactly what you were thinking. And even if you do remember, it's not going to be accurate because our memories are awful. And so we recreate memories in our minds and we add stuff or take stuff away. So what's he really asking? And if that's the question, so it seems like there's something you're really wanting to know from like 20 years ago. What does that have to do with today? Like, so that was 20 years ago, and I'm not minimizing that it was 20 years ago, but what are you asking? What does that have to do with today? What do you need for today? And see if you can get to the question that's really being asked that maybe he's not even aware that he's asking, but it's often like, well, do you still love me? Do you care about me? Is there has this happened before? And am I stupid for staying? So what is the real question? Because unless you have an amazing memory, you're probably not going to remember, but that's not really what is being asked. But he may not know, or the wife may not know there's something. So it takes a little bit of patience and curiosity to figure that out and to figure out, okay, what's the question behind this question?
Yeah, and I hate, I mean, I get these all the time where people call and they're sharing all the gory details. Well, the other person's asking, and I'm like, that doesn't mean that it's a good idea for them to hear. Like, then I get the betrayed partners that are going, I can't get this out of my head. And I was like, yep, you've got it stuck. And it's now you visualize this because you know too many details or whatever you're making up. So I would really encourage the two of you to work with a qualified professional to navigate this, but I love what Troy was saying, that there's really a question underneath there, and what is that, and how could, and if it's, why did you do this, why is almost irrelevant. It's like, how do we move forward? Here's where like I said earlier, here's where we are today. All of that stuff happened. Here's where we are today, and how do we move forward? And that's really, and again, it's not minimizing the past, but you can't undo, like I told you earlier, that addict, that it was really not a good choice, and he knew it, and he's like, I wish I could undo. Wishing doesn't change it. You can't undo it. All you can do is, I've got today, and how do I move forward in a different way? So but I would encourage you to lean into some professional help. Again, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. If you're looking for qualified professionals or other resources, just let us know. So thank you, Troy. Go enjoy the time with your kids and the other scouts, and the outdoors and sunshine. So,
All right. Take care.
all right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.